Hello and welcome to Conversations with Peacock Voices. Today, we are so lucky to get to chit chat with Angela Zentefis. Angela, I just want to start by asking you a little bit about what it is that you do and just learning more about kind of your work life.
Yeah, I really appreciate you having me here. It is a great honor to be on your show. So currently for work, I am the associate director for human resources business partners at Northwestern University. And that means that the human resources business partner team that supports the Chicago campus, because there are two campuses at Evanston and Chicago. I help lead that team. So it supports like the Feinberg School of Professional Studies, and the Pritzker Law School.
Amazing.
Mhm.
So, you work in HR, and I have recently learned that HR sounds an awful lot like what could become a reality television show with all of the experiences you've had. But I can imagine that, I mean, that's a big job with a lot of very large sub schools, right?
Mhm.
Feinberg is
Mhm.
that's their medical school, if I
Yep.
recall correctly.
Feinberg
So
School of
you're
Medicine,
dealing
right?
with
Mhm.
professional studies, medicine, law, and
Mhm.
inside of that, I mean, Northwestern medicine is huge, right?
Yeah.
That alone, as somebody who's used them, I know it's those are big buildings with lots of employees working in them. And I'd love to know about kind of in your day-to-day life, what are different types of interactions that you're having to deal with or enjoying dealing with, I guess.
Yeah. So my team and myself, we work a lot with employee relations. So those are the fun stories that you may be um, referencing to. So we help navigate the employee experience at the university. So we would work with performance management, like the day-to-day performance management. We help be a strategic partner for the departments that we work with. So our team is assigned to different departments within the university, like the schools that I mentioned. But as you know, Feinberg School of Medicine's huge. It's
Yeah.
thousands of people that work with the school, and we are assigned then different departments to navigate with their leadership. So being a strategic partner, working with employees when they have questions, concerns, and they're not sure how to navigate the university, especially if there's inquiries around their employee experience. And then we are a change agent. So when there's policy changes or different initiatives that the human resources is embarking on or leading, they are that change agent with the leadership or staff. And we are a partner with employees when they have questions around how to grow their career. We help provide or navigate the resources to get them where they may need to, or they dream of getting to, or they where they want to get to.
So that sounds really interesting because it sounds like you get to do a lot of different things as you're kind of navigating through your day-to-day life. And it sounds like you also have to manage a lot of different situations. Like it feels like you have these really positive interactions when people say like, "Hey, this is where I want to be headed. How do I get there?" You also are managing a team, which means not only are you just working with employees, but you're managing your people. It
Mhm.
sounds like when you're navigating the employee experience and there might be some concerns that you might also be navigating difficult conversations and all I can I wonder too, as changes are being made in the HR world at Northwestern, if people respond in whatever way they choose to respond to said changes you're having to
Yeah.
make, and kind of wrangling thousands of people into employing these changes. So, what
Yeah.
would you say that some of the challenges are in this world that you're operating in? Because that's a lot of different things, right?
And the world has changed significantly since COVID. That's kind
Yeah.
of was a tipping point for human resources. There's even human resources has had this niche where we were uh, party planner. We made sure that birthdays were celebrated, and sometimes we did policy interpretation, and then sometimes had to navigate difficult conversations. But we there was the realm of human resources had shifted so significantly. It was like a forced hand, where human resources, like I said, was to that party planner to being that strategic partner and everything in between. And we had many people that just couldn't even understand what HR did until COVID. That was the
Mm.
major tipping point. COVID and the rise of social justice. That was such a, I think, a positive change for human resources,
Yeah.
where they were it really was a demand to have the skill set to have lead difficult conversations, not just to have them, to lead them, to lead
Yeah.
them where you are coaching and influencing senior leaders on how to have those difficult conversations. When you had the financial crisis in 2008, HR wasn't like the leading function in that. It was finance, right, or accounting. But COVID was it was all HR, and so uh, some people really struggled since then. I think HR has gotten a chance to really evolve on what we can truly do, like a truly skilled an HR professional can really help with, on the coaching element, having how to lead those difficult conversations. It's not just the conversations; it's the entire experience around it. So you're right that we sometimes have the absolute worst conversations, like absolute worst situations that you ever could think of in the workforce. We're the center of it, where we have to make the communication plan, actually implement that communication plan, and think about the tomorrow, what that tomorrow will look
Mm.
like. You may have a communication professional that may help with talking points, sure, but they aren't there for the next day. And that's where
Yeah.
that HR professional is they're there for the next day and thinking about those little situations that are going to come up afterwards. Like I said, we have some of the hardest and best conversations.
Yeah.
Um, and those are different skill sets that you need.
I would love to learn more about what those skill sets are and how
Hmm.
you developed them because COVID just wasn't that long ago. So
Yeah.
you have been in your career pre this big shift and post this big shift. So what did you do not only to develop those skill sets yourself, but also to be able to teach them? Because I think there's a
Hmm.
difference between learning how to do something for yourself and then teaching others how to apply those skills for themselves.
Yeah.
And I'd just love to hear more about that.
I would say a lot of bumps in the road. Those are teaching moments.
Yeah.
A lot of the moments that I've learned the most in has been the bumps in the road, the angry employee, the managers who screamed at me. I thank them because they
Yeah.
were teaching moments. But the skill set is like being willing to learn from those moments, being
Mm,
willing to be flexible in those moments, from the moment to on, being willing to take accountability and swallow your pride and keep being willing to keep moving. Because if
yeah.
I was stuck in the sand, there was no way I would have been able to continue being successful. There's just no way. Because there's going to be bumps in the road. I have had where I've led a team during COVID. At some of the most difficult moments, you're telling people their livelihood is ended there. I've had very very personal stories with employees where they've really emotionally and struggled with their mental health, death to self harm. But if I didn't have those difficult moments and kind of juggle, try to figure out like what's my next move and being willing to learn, I wouldn't have been able to continue to have those difficult conversations with more ease. That's where I'm at now. So it's that willingness to learn and swallow your
Yeah.
pride.
Yeah. That's so real. I think that's a
Yeah.
part of being a teacher. It sounds like you actually do quite a bit of teaching in HR, which is an
Hmm.
interesting thing that I never really thought of.
Yeah.
But it sounds like you do a lot of teaching as you help advise people on how to navigate these situations. And anytime you're a guide, I think that's some form of teaching. But something that I say all the time is perfection is fake. The idea that you're going to go through life without making mistakes is this complete fallacy. I don't
Mhm.
know why we're told that we're supposed to be striving for perfection, because I actually think that that's something that will stunt our growth. Actually, the more
Yeah.
you're open to taking risks and failing and learning from those failures, the
Yeah.
more you're going to change and evolve and grow as a person. So,
Yeah.
I
Well,
totally agree with you in that.
some of the biggest advancements in history has been from mistakes. Some of the
Yeah.
biggest inventions has been from mistakes and learning from them.
Yeah. I talk with
I
clients about this a lot because I always say, look, it's just the two of us. If you're going to make a mistake, do it with confidence. Like, I'd rather
Right.
you really mess up and do it with full commitment.
Yeah.
And that way we can say, okay, this worked, this didn't work. But if you're kind of ish doing it, then I can't correct anything. You can't correct a half done anything, right? I can't make
Right.
adjustments in that. What I can do is say, oof, okay, I need to reword how I I explained this concept to you. But yeah, I
Mhm.
want kind of talk through the difference between those difficult moments and those
Mhm.
really positive moments, because I think, a lot of times we do learn from sticky situations. And I know that, I spend a lot of time helping people cultivate how they communicate during those sticky situations. How can you calm down people in the room and help people feel more comfortable? But I also think there's a lot to be learned from those really beautiful, exciting moments. And it's less traumatizing for everybody involved when they're great. But I
Yeah.
think, like, when you are really successful, being able to take the positive and saying, "Ooh, that was a really successful moment.
Mhm.
What was it that worked so I can replicate that process?" Do you have like any favorite moments where you're like, "Oh wow, I actually learned this amazing thing from this really great interaction?"
And it's because you're so tarnished from such difficult situations that there has been a lot of good that has come from those um in situations that were designed that they were negative. Uh, but I have seen a lot of success stories when I have seen staff or colleagues that they landed in the spot that they needed to land in, where they landed and where they wanted to land, and I supported them or helped them along the way. Those have been the most impactful moments when I have been able to help leadership who were in an uncertain situation and or situation that really caused risk to the organization, and we navigated through to get everybody to where they needed to be, has been the most impactful, where I watched senior leaders be so respectful to it's not myself, but it's to the functionality of human resources. That has been the most successful, where they see HR as a true partner, not this negative aspect a negative function that was like, I have to check the box and just work with HR. And it's when they've seen us as a true partner, those have been the most impactful.
Yeah. Do you run into that a lot? I feel like, I obviously was a full-time musician for a really long time, and then now I have this business. And so HR, to be honest with you, has never been something I've spent a lot of time with or thinking about outside of clients who have worked in HR or
Hmm.
who are dealing with HR when I'm dealing with HR in order to the, you know, get the coaching from my client that we need. And so it's not a world I have a ton of familiarity with. But do you feel like the stigma, it sounds like the function of HR is changing so much. Do you feel like there's a stigma attached to HR that maybe also in its way to shift in a different direction? Or do you feel like there's not a stigma associated with it? I just would love to learn more about that.
I think there's still that stigma. I think that HR comes in with inherent power to some degree, and people have abused that power. I know in the past I have heard incredible, heartbreaking stories. I think that yes, there is still a stigma. It is unfortunate. It is um, disappointing on our end, those who are trying to just do the right thing.
Yeah.
One of your questions that you shared earlier when we were preparing for today was about how did you land in human resources? And I'm this quiet uh, activist that I stay in my lane, and how can I make the world a better place in my little bubble? And human resources is that way of just making sure we're doing the right thing. It's not about the policy. It's not about even the law. It's like, how are we going to do the right thing? How are we going to do the right thing for for the organization, and how are we going to do the right thing for the people? And that's always a struggle, and the stigma always comes with that you just work for the organization, you don't care, and that's incredibly heartbreaking because there's many of us who do significantly care, that every step of the way we are constantly thinking about the employee experience and how do we improve it, and how can we give as much as we can, how can we do the right thing for the employee. Our policies are written like that, or at least for the organizations I've worked with or
Yeah.
worked in, and there's been many. How can we make things right? How can we help the employee? And this isn't because the law tells us to. This isn't because the state enforces it. It's because we want to.
Yeah.
But that's not everybody, and so there's going to be a stigma.
Yeah.
Unfortunately there'll always be a stigma when you have the element of people in it, and they're not numbers, they're human beings. There's going to be a stigma.
Yeah. I feel like, you know, I loved what you said there. This was your world, your way of making the world a better place in your own little pocket. I
Mhm.
feel exactly the same way. And I think that there's something beautiful about watching people do the thing they're meant to be doing. You
Yeah.
know, when you get to have a conversation with someone or interact with somebody doing their job, and you're like, wow, watching you be like doing what you were born to be doing is always this really exciting thing. And I just think it's so cool that where you fell and that you've been able to
Mhm.
find this. But I can also imagine it's beyond frustrating when a few bad actors are the ones that create the tenor for an entire field, an entire profession,
Oh,
when
yeah.
it doesn't actually represent the majority of the people operating inside of that profession.
Right.
So, so I know that you're in higher education right now, and then
Mhm.
you've also historically had other jobs in higher education. Is Has your whole career been in the university
Right.
system, or did you enter HR through a different lane?
So I have not my entire career. I have worked in corporate when I started my career, where we were a publicly traded or company. And it was a phenomenal organization. I worked for Churchill Downs for many years. Once COVID hit, and once I got the taste of higher education and that nonprofit world, I this is where I continue my career. Yeah, I will stay in higher ed or nonprofit, especially since COVID.
Yeah.
I'm very driven to do that. And that was the other thing when I realized with stigmas, with human resources, not only the HR, it's just you will always have corporations that if an HR professional is part of that corporation, they the people are not their number one priority. When usually in higher education and in nonprofit, their people are their number one priority.
Yeah. So it's
So,
like the ethics of you found a niche where like the ethics of who you're working for aligns more consistently with what you're looking for and what you're looking to do in your life. I think that's
that's a
amazing.
that's absolute priority for me. That's when I was looking for my next role when I moved back to Chicago. That was absolutely the number one priority of what I was applying for, and looking at what language they used in their posting to what type of organization it was. I was very mindful of this is a priority of where do the people land in their structure, or their strategic planning, and or their own priorities.
If today's conversation hit a nerve and you're ready to sound more like the leader you are, you don't have to figure it out alone. Our private coaching is designed to help you develop the vocal presence and confidence you need to show up fully and be heard. Head to peacockvoices.com and click on coaching to learn more. And now let's get back to conversations with Peacock Voices. So, as you have been navigating all these different aspects of your career, have you ever thought about how your voice actually sounds and like how you actually use your voice as you move through these different types of relationships, whether you're discussing positive things or negative things or neutral things with employees, or you're working with your team, or you're, collaborating with your boss or
Mhm.
bosses? Have you ever thought about how your voice works in that world?
Every single day now. Every single day. I actually maybe about a decade ago, I had a senior leader I was working with that I had to introduce. This was a stumbling point. I mentioned. Like this was a little mistake I made, but I had to introduce a topic that I knew was going to be controversial,
Mhm.
and I changed my voice. I changed my demeanor right when I was about to introduce the topic, and I knew that I was preparing for a negative reaction. I was preparing for almost a conflict. And so everything about me changed. And she stopped me before I even finished my sentence and said, I want you to think about how your behavior is right now and how your voice has changed, your demeanor has changed. So you already gave away your power. She knew what I was going to talk about. And I don't even remember the topic. It's irrelevant, but I just remember that moment. And now I think about it every single time I am speaking. And even if it is a casual meeting, I am considering how am I coming across. Luckily with COVID, you now get to kind of watch yourself. And I've
Mhm.
taken that as an opportunity of like, watch how am I behaving? What is my tone? Because people hear that. And
Yeah.
every word that I'm saying, even if it's in a casual setting, they are looking into that as either is this going to have an impact on what I need? Is it going to have an influence on what I need? Is this going to give me comfort because sometimes they are struggling? Every single word. I am thinking about how my pitch is, how fast I'm talking. I've gotten all that negative feedback in the past of how fast I'm talking.
Mhm.
Um, And so I also think about myself of what is my personal emotional state? What is my physical state? Because I know that if that is not taken care of, all of that emotion or all of that rundown will come out in my words, and the employee or leader will hear it, and it will change the intent of that conversation, and it will come out. I've seen where the staff member responds negatively, and I realize now I have to de-escalate a situation because I didn't take care of myself to prepare for this conversation. I was tired, I was hungry, I was not well, I was sick, whatever it was. I lost control of the conversation because I didn't take care of myself, and I wasn't mindful of how my being was to then being present in that conversation. So ever since that decade ago of the feedback of realizing how I'm coming across and not controlling my message, and then I'm losing my power, I think about it then every day. How am I managing my power in this conversation?
Yeah. I mean, first of all, that is incredible feedback to get that early on in your career. I
Hmm.
mean, I feel like a lot of times I'll hear people who say that they got feedback and it's usually horrible that's about their voice, where it's like, you sound like a flight attendant. What does that mean? What does
What does that mean?
sounding like a flight attendant mean?
Right.
I like there's
What does that
what?
mean?
What is that? I love the fact that your old boss was able to be so articulate, saying, look, you are literally telegraphing this,
Yeah.
and you are losing your power by doing it, because that is actually effective and
Hmm.
allows you to make adjustments. And I think, you know, this idea of making sure that you're telegraphing what you want to be telegraphing is
Yep.
so critical to our success, because humans are not binary. Like,
Right.
very rarely are you feeling one emotion.
Yep.
Very rarely
No.
is it like, I'm
Right.
just excited right now. It's some combination of, I'm curious, I'm tired,
Yeah.
I am distracted, there's all these things that happen at once. And I think that being really present and being really authentic is the ability to choose what we share with other people.
Right.
Like that to me is like fully being able to be present in a conversation is saying like I have the ability to make sure that I am only communicating what it is that I want you to interact with me because yeah, I might be hungry or I might be nauseous or whatever it is, but I don't need you to know that
Right.
necessarily. And that actually doesn't facilitate the goal of whatever it is that we're doing. And so I think, to get that understanding so early on in your career is a huge gift,
It
especially
was a
as a
gift.
young woman, because I feel like as women, we also have all of this stuff attached to that as well.
I
And
knew it was that moment. I knew it was a gift. I knew it was.
yeah,
I have to be better present in not just when you say present of not only how I'm feeling, but what is the purpose of this conversation? Where is the
yeah,
audience? What am I like? Who am I talking to? What is the purpose of this? What can I add and subtract from what am saying or not saying? I'm purposefully because I have to think about my audience, or I'm gonna
yeah.
lose. I'm gonna lose my power.
Well, and it's also like, what do you want your audience to walk away from? So you may
Right.
know that this is going to be conflict. You may know that they're going to be pissed off about whatever it is you're saying. But if the
Right.
goal isn't to get them pissed off,
Right.
how can you communicate your content in a way
Right.
that instantly is going to make them feel like, oh, this isn't so bad? You know?
Mhm. 'Cause you
And how
can.
you can absolutely change the culture of a conversation just by how you make those
Totally.
choices, right? And by like
Absolutely.
predicting the outcome, you lose that power and you're saying, nope, I'm giving that to you now. You get to make the choice instead of saying, I'm going to set this up so you're going to think this is really a great thing that's happening. And
Yep.
then we'll deal with whatever fallout we need to. I do
Yep.
want I do want to talk a little bit about that though, because I think that this idea of having our default voices comes up in so many different ways in our
Mhm.
lives. Like the idea that you were saying you were already anticipating this conflict and so your voice
Mhm.
completely changed. I
Mhm.
feel like I feel like we have so many voices we put on. Like, do you have a I know I have a golden retriever. And so when I'm talking to Henry, my
Yeah.
golden, I'm like, oh, I'm such a good boy, and my
Yeah.
voice gets higher and more, we do all these things, but also a customer service voice. If I'm talking and making an appointment, all of a
Yep.
sudden I talk just a little bit differently
Yep.
versus, all of these default settings that we're not necessarily aware of. Is that something that has, because you've had a decade of paying attention to this, have you
Mhm.
noticed various scenarios where you have to be more aware than others of kind of
Oh, yeah.
navigating your default space?
Absolutely. And navigating it though, I use the skill set of I'm constantly reading the other person. I'm
Yeah.
constantly noticing how they even to an eyebrow lift to
Mhm.
a perked mouth. I watch every little behavior because then I'm almost playing chess in my mind of
Yeah.
what's the next step. Because that's how I'm always noticing it. Um ever since that gift of a decade ago of her saying, watch how like you just lost your power. So I'm regularly reading the other person. So then my voice is kind of following that other person and then thinking, what's my next step to where I need to go? So if I'm seeing
Yeah.
someone escalate and I need to manage it, I'm watching of when they start to drop or they start to kind of de-escalate, and then how can I listen to them, be empathetic, and then bring them to where I need them to go in the conversation. So yes, I do have a default, especially in HR. In my work, I have a default that what words I choose, or take the pauses I need, or take uh, um, think about how I am still being empathetic but yet firm.
Yeah.
Maybe a little different at home. I may be a little less empathetic, which is just so ironic. That's where the empathy is needed.
It's so
But
real. That's so
it's so
real.
I'm more
And
empathetic
you
to
all up at work, so
that's you're right. I have a pot of that gold and you need a lot of it when you're in HR. There's a lot of empathy that I need to bring out, and that because it takes so much, you're right. It takes so much effort too. It takes so much work of Not just it doesn't, not that it doesn't come natural. It's just I'm constantly like playing chess in my head,
Well, you're always
constantly,
on. Like when
always.
you're
Yeah,
aware of your communicate, like it's so refreshing talking to you like this because you're so aware of even the intense communication, and you have been for so long, you understand that it is a lot of awareness and a lot of effort to constantly not just be controlling what you're saying, because hi, how are you? And hi, how are you? Are totally different messages we're
totally.
sending, right? And so you're not only in a conversation that's not scripted, which is a lot of how we operate in the world, right? You're
Right,
not only thinking about
right.
words, you're not only listening, but you're also having to make sure that you're filtering through your initial, like, oh my gosh, this is so obnoxious, or whatever your emotional
Uh-huh.
response is. And then you're saying, what do I want their outcome to be? Now how do
Mhm.
I make sure I'm matching my intent to what I'm trying to achieve? That's
Yeah,
a lot
right.
of work. And so if
A
you're
lot.
doing that in every single conversation, how many hours do you think you spend in conversations a day on average? Like if you were to put like a guesstimate.
Like 4 hours a day at least. I'm in a meeting. You're right.
Yeah.
That's a lot of time. It's a
Well,
lot of
when you
time.
only get, and they like research it tells us it's something around 4 hours a day of intense focus that we get.
Oh
Well,
wow.
right. And
Oh,
if that's all you get, and you're
it's
like,
all
well, I
that.
still have to do my job afterwards.
It Yeah, it is. That's all. Oh, well, if that's what the research, my entire day is of that. Of my entire
Yeah.
focus is that. Because
Yeah.
also I'm leading it with I know what their question probably is. A lot of it is the negotiating of and holding my own judgment because I've been doing this for so long. I have heard so
Yeah.
much. And there's always going to be this level of judgment of what is this person's intent and how am I going to make them bring them where they need to go, but
Yep.
not be judgmental in the process because I'm curious of what their intent is. They're going to be self-focused. So, how am I also going to say no? Because most of the time they're asking something that is going to be a no, or what else can we do instead? But how am I going to make sure they're de-escalated and still leave the conversation somewhat fulfilled,
Yeah.
somewhat satisfied? Or there's a lot of questions that I get that I can't do anything. I have
Yeah.
a inner there's definitely an increase in interpersonal conflict now at work. Mental health a lot have never actually recovered since COVID, and so they are really struggling. They are really struggling. And the past social norms of work are gone for many. There is a new generation that has entered the workforce that does have completely different social norms than, let's say, the baby boomers that are leaving the workforce. Completely different social norms for work. And what the baby boomers saw in their career to what the Gen Z will see in their career is completely different. And so the asks or the struggles that they have, it's navigating of what I've known to what our best practices and to where the future of work is going. I have to constantly be thinking of that, which then you're kind of unraveling some of these best practices in the midst of these conversations. Because there is no handbook that's going to tell us uh, what Gen Z may need to how they're navigating it with a baby boomer leader and what are the new social norms. I'm not talking about social justice, I'm talking about just interpersonal conflict. Uh,
Yeah.
and navigating that where people are really struggling and
Yeah.
how I may not be able to do anything, to be frank.
Yeah.
Like I'm not, it's not a policy, it's just simply interpersonal conflict. And how can I give the best advice to get them satisfied or fulfilled? It's hard.
Yeah. I can only imagine because, you know, every generation is taught to communicate so differently,
Hmm.
and also I think as you live life, and I've been fortunate enough, a lot of my friends are significantly older than I am. One of the gifts of that is actually, when I talk with my friends who are in their 60s and 70s, they've lived so much more life than I have.
Right.
And so their view of the same situation is totally different from me. And it's
Yep.
such a
Totally
gift
different.
because I feel like you only know what you know. And I don't know if you've experienced this, but the older you get, I feel like the less you feel like you know, if that makes
Yeah,
sense.
that's true.
It's like you realize, oh,
Yeah,
I know less and less and less as I get older. Because I realize
that's
how
right.
much more there is to know in other spaces. And I can imagine that having to build bridges or help bridge like large generational gaps between people who maybe aren't as aware, who are already kind
Mhm.
of, you know, amped or
Yeah.
whatever it is about each other. I can see that that could be a very difficult space to be in because
Mhm.
I also think, and I don't know if you've seen this, and I'd be interested to know that I think that COVID, we lost a lot of compassion
We do. Yeah. There's
as a
studies on it right now.
I
Yeah.
think the
Yeah.
idea of being compassionate and allowing people to be different and like tolerant kind of
Yeah.
in a
I
lot
know
of ways.
there are studies that are researching this right now, or there's studies that are coming out with this. I think
Yeah.
there was well, I think the change in social media has had the biggest influence because social media was initially trying to connect us and it has divided us more. Because we're all living in a different world than we real like in a different world where
Like a
my
bubble.
world,
We each have our
yes,
little
that's what I
micro.
mean. Right.
Yeah.
And it's because we are driven by this social media, how we are interacting with the phone, to the with the internet, I mean. Uh
I
that
feel
has
like those
had
are synonymous now, right?
that's yeah, they are.
How many
And
times are
social
we going to go on a call? Yeah.
and we have a different world. I have a different set of information than you do.
Yeah.
Because and I'm not saying you and I personally, I'm saying we have a different set of information because how we interact with the algorithm. And I'm not going
No,
down a
I
because you're
mean,
yeah. It is.
I
It's just
actually was
different.
saying this to a friend just yesterday. She was under some feeling like some mom guilt, and I was like, we
Yeah.
follow different moms on Instagram. And
Yes.
I was like, I follow moms who are like, this is hard. I'm being really honest
Yeah.
about how hard this is. And my friend is following people who are like, and then look at my perfectly clean, aesthetic home and my
Yep.
perfectly well behaved babies. And I was like, you need to follow some of these other people
Yes.
who make you
Uh-huh.
feel I
And
do
the
that. And you can be aligned with people and still have a completely different experience
uh,
from your friend who has similar morals or similar interests.
yep.
And wow, we just have a totally different experience of this. Yeah.
Yeah. And both set of moms have always been there. They
Yeah.
just now have a microphone, and with a microphone, they're treated with as they're experts. They are experts, and they have a different world than each other, where they're both moms. That is still the same world, but they are looking at the world differently. And I
Yeah.
think ever since, as they say, like ever since the algorithm, right? Ever since that algorithm was developed and how they kept us on social media as much as they have, it that I think has really changed because there has always been this like a struggle with compassion. I remember when we started our careers where they said like leave your personal life at the door, and that's not real. We're human beings. You just said we're not
Yeah.
binary. We're complex. That's just not real. Um, m- but I think ever since the algorithm where we are interacting with a world thinking it's different when it's the same world, we're looking at it through the lens that we have been embarking on since the introduction of the algorithm.
Yeah.
I think that has changed. Like COVID though has just been where we were so online because we had that time. We
Yeah.
see the world differently because of how that algorithm has built it for us.
Well, it's like we each got an individually curated world. And
Yeah,
unless you
absolutely.
on
Right.
purpose were saying, okay, I need to make sure that I am experiencing a world outside of my
Uh-huh.
box.
Right.
I my a family member of mine introduced me actually to an email news. It just shows up in my inbox called The Flip Side, and it just takes a topic and it and it goes through conservative, liberal, just all sorts of viewpoints on a specific topic and just does bite-sized bits
Right.
about that topic, literally for this purpose of that way you're not just seeing whatever it is that has been curated for you, but you also see the reasoning from everyone else in this just like very short, it's a very short read. But
Yeah.
I think it is with COVID, I'm with you. I feel like we had this world that was curated just for us, and then we were
Yeah.
isolated. So then all of our time was spent in that world because that's also how you connected with the people that you cared about. And then I think we're now just starting to realize how big of an effect it's had on how we interact, even post. Like, yeah, now we can see everybody in person, and it's been a few years and all of that, but it
Hmm.
still was ingrained in us because of that time.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I can imagine that that is
And,
a really interesting world to
and
navigate for you.
yeah, and they all have the same emotions that they are struggling with, right?
Mhm.
They all, like, with the staff members that I mean, or how we interact with each other. Uh, let's say we look at something, we both are looking at it with fear, but we are looking at it based on that individually curated world that we have, and we are reacting to that fear instead of uh, not having that individualized, curated, someone's trying to make money off of our fear. If
Yeah.
that was removed, if that algorithm was removed and we still had social media the way it was originally intended or the way it was originally interacted with, I think we would have a different result. I think
Yeah.
we would have a different, that conflict, I think, would really be reduced because we are like, everybody is struggling with something. Everybody is struggling with fear. Everybody, fear of what tomorrow is going to look like, fear of how am I going to continue to survive or thrive. But then with
Yeah.
that, algorithm is hurting us.
Yeah. Yeah. Because it is, instead of saying, look at all these different ways
Hmm.
that people can be united, it's saying, oh no, it's this way or no way.
Yeah.
And yeah, yeah, yeah.
Or
Yeah.
United won't help a lot of people make money. And that's,
Yeah.
yeah, well, it
I
does,
mean,
it
isn't
won't.
that war? Isn't that I mean, we
Yeah.
got out of the Great Depression because of
The war.
this.
Yeah.
That's
Right.
how war works. It's great for economies, you
Absolutely.
know, which is,
That's why they're making money off the fear. And once they introduced that algorithm, the money shot up like crazy.
yeah,
That's why they kept it.
yeah,
It doesn't matter I think it's really having an effect on people, obviously, just interaction, and then on work,
yeah.
on how they interact. With work
Well,
is huge, actually.
yeah, well,
Huge.
because you have your whole entry level workforce.
Hmm. Yes, they've heard this,
Yeah, your
and
whole entry level workforce went to college or
yep,
during a time when everything was online.
yep,
And so they were getting educated completely online in this, and
very
their
different.
teen years were in this curated world
Yep,
because,
right,
the algorithm existed for that. And then you have the senior leadership, which for the most part have, you know, didn't have the internet when they were in college, a
right,
lot of
right,
them,
right,
right? And
right,
not everybody, obviously, but if they did, it was, not the same way where it certainly isn't, your iPhone that's basically a computer in your pocket.
right.
And so because it's like, oh, well, that's such a fill in the blank of the generation,
Uh-huh.
I can see how that can be a really challenging communication effort
uh,
for HR to say, okay, but we need people from all of these spaces, and we need
yeah,
to work together and
yeah,
understand that we have a common goal. We are more alike than we are different. So
right.
how do we, do that?
We also struggle with many people who are online who portray themselves as professionals in human resources, and they give a lot of disinformation or totally false information, disinformation, misinformation, whatever the term. A lot of false information is going around. I see it all the time, and they are not experts in HR, and that is feeding into the workforce because I see it daily where they hear something online and they think that is going to be my experience. So that's where the HR is not, the HR is not my friend, or there's a stigma in HR that is feeding into it. And they hear what they are owed and they're entitled to because one person got a microphone and it's not correct information. And when
Yeah.
they hear that, it spreads like wildfire because, of course, they're on that line and it could go to millions of people.
Yeah.
And it's false.
And
And
it's
this
so
is
much
what we deal with.
easier to be negative than it is to be like it's so much
Uh
easier to be
huh.
like, oh my gosh,
Yeah. Or they say like they're entitled to things that there is no law, there's no regulate, there's no best practice. They're not entitled to it. Or
Yeah.
regardless of just not even entitled, it's just they have this perception of what the work life could be and how they can behave in that because they have someone that grabbed a microphone and passed on this information and gave this advice because and those people when you challenge them online in the comments they say horrible things back because there's no limit, and that's even if you're being neutral and just saying this is not actually information, this is the impact when you're saying this, or if they behave in that way, they don't care what accountability do they have. I could say
Yeah.
whatever they could say whatever they want, and who's going to hold them accountable? Right?
Yeah.
But people then take that word of advice and they take it into actual action
Yeah.
all the time. I just had it this week of someone who's done that. Someone who did something who was it was rightfully that they needed to be terminated because they violated policy. I'm not telling too much, but
Yeah.
and they made a violated policy, and their answer was, "So I get severance," because they heard it online. They anybody who would have heard the story would have said that person they needed to part ways with the organization. But that was their answer because they heard it somewhere online. I didn't have that. I didn't have I heard we heard it from word of mouth. But I didn't they didn't have people that had a platform where millions of people can listen to it, but they heard it online. I've seen it. I've seen those videos
Yeah.
that they said uh that you get this, you get that, or this is how the workplace, or this is what you can do. And it's not accurate. And I
No,
think
you're
this is
not
how
required to give actually a lot. The United States is pretty stingy when it comes
yeah,
to
there
that.
that is that is yeah, that's the unfortunate part. I agree with you. But that is accurate. But they hear it online, and then these people make demands because they heard it online that this and that must be the fact because whatever is online is fact in their mind. How would we know different? So that's why they're receiving information that you and I are not receiving. So you're getting a professional will tell you these are laws, these are these are best practices. So you're getting true information. So this is how you navigate the world with actual professionals, experts. But if someone's not an expert and this is that information that they're getting, they interact with the world that way. That's a struggle, and that's what we're seeing in the workforce a
Yeah.
lot.
Yeah. Oh gosh, that's so wild. I feel like this conversation has made me want to find a doctor to talk to.
Oh gosh, and just even say doctor, like that's a whole other thing. That's a whole other thing. And it's just it's
And
I
now
always
to have
say,
a discussion about what it is to navigate the
or
world
what's an
of
expert? What's an expert? I also think that I had a friend that said this, and this I live with it. The power of no. So those who say no to whatever an expert says, for some people they become the expert. Like they're the ones who say no, that
mm,
is not fact. Let's say if I say in the workforce, everybody, it's best practice to wear blue. In some states, it's required to wear blue. I'm making something up.
yeah.
If the person who says no, that's wrong, for people who they will think that is the expert just because they said no, just
No.
because they questioned the best practices or they questioned the expert, then they in turn become the expert, which is very strange. It's fine to
Yeah.
challenge ideas, but but when someone is an expert and if you want to understand, that's different. Just to challenge to say no and deny the expertise, that's where it's a problem. The
Yeah.
denial of expertise is a huge issue, and I see it a lot in the workforce.
Yeah,
Not
I
as much like
believe
higher
that.
education because they love it. They believe in
They like
expertise. Sorry.
experts. And there's
Right.
probably a lot of experts. I think like when two experts disagree, that's actually super exciting, right? Because then you're like,
Right.
ooh, tell me
Right.
more, you know? I mean, that's academic debate, right? That is
Right. When they
um
say you are not an expert or not the debate part, because that you're right, that's how
but like if
ideas
I'm
are
so
created.
I'm a voice professional and me
Right.
saying, no, you're wrong. There are no like you're wrong in saying that there are intergenerational issues coming into the workforce. Like
Right.
that's I am in no way, shape, or form an expert in that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Or if I challenge
absolutely.
your expertise because I just want to, you
Yeah.
have been studying this your entire career. You have
Yeah.
been reading the literature, you've been reading the research, and I just say like, no, that I just want to say no.
I don't like it, so it's
I
wrong.
don't like it. Or and not to challenge the idea or to create knowledge from it or to try to grow that, not that, just to say no. It
Makes you the
that
expert.
I become the expert. For some people who are listening to it, then it's like, wait, is she the expert then, or is the person who said no the expert?
Gosh, this is why critical thinking is so
Uh-huh.
important.
Huge.
It is so important. This is, yeah, the case in point. Well, this
Yeah.
has been
Anyway,
super interesting. Thank you so much. I feel like
you
we
know,
could talk forever. But I did want to close out with a question that I try to end every session with. And that is, who is one of your favorite voices? It can be a speaker, it can be a singer, it can be, your mom or somebody famous.
yeah. I've
I'm
been
just like,
thinking about this question since to prepare for this. And
yeah,
I thought of I was like, who has the best voice? And it's not only just the voice, it's what they give to the world. So I thought, and maybe it's because we're doing a podcast of Ira Glass. Ira Glass, because he, besides his voice, it's so comforting. His voice is so
yeah,
comforting. There's such a deep knowledge that he dives into. He's sharing the stories that he shares or his team shares, and just him sharing it. Uh, it brings a sense of humility to when I listen to him. It brings a sense of empathy back when you're jaded, angry, tired, hungry. He brings back that connection to each other just because he's
yeah.
sharing the stories he shares and how he shares it and his voice. Uh, he's my favorite. When I hear Ira, I just am like, I'm good. It feels like a cozy
Like
blanket.
a hug or
And
something.
uh-huh.
I feel like he has an iconic voice. Like I
Yes.
feel like his voice is one of those voices where you hear it and you're like, I know who that is. There's
Uh-huh.
no question. I mean, we all have, our voices are our thumbprints. We all have voices that are uniquely ours, but I feel
Yeah.
like he has one of the most identifiable speaking voices. Now, no, maybe it's we should
Right.
both listen to NPR, but but it is so, yes, I know exactly what you're saying. There's just something
Yes.
about the way he speaks where you're like, oh, okay. And like I know that I'm in for, and you also know what you're in for. It's going to be
Right.
interesting, it's going to be engaging. And so there's like almost predictability attached to hearing him speak.
Absolutely.
Which
Yeah,
I think is
absolutely.
amazing.
Yeah, there's so much that's going on in this world, and just when you hear his voice, exactly like what you need to navigate the rest of your day.
I love it. I love it. Well, thank you so much for coming. This has been really fun and really interesting on my end.
Thank you.
And I feel like I have so much to think about now. I hope that you have a wonderful week.
It was wonderful chatting with you. Again, thank you for the honor of having me join you. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely.